I told my sister no, knowing it was her only chance to become a mother. And now she hates me. I'm 38 and I always thought life would give me more time. Time for a career, time to find the right guy, time to finally settle down and start a family. I'm Stella. And last month I found out I had almost none of it left. Not time to live, no, but time for the thing I wanted most in the world, to be a mother. It happened during a routine checkup with Dr. Collins. A few years ago I had frozen some of my eggs just in case, because everyone was saying you had to hedge your bets. I'd shrugged it off back then, thinking it was just a precaution that I was young and healthy. I paid the annual storage fee without really thinking about it. And now Collins is looking at my latest results at my AMH, anti-Müllerian hormone level, and his face is, well, not tragic but very serious. He says, Stella, I have to be honest. What we froze back then is likely all you have. Your reserves are critically low now. If you want to use them for yourself, you need to start right away. Within a month, maybe 2. Otherwise, your chances will rapidly approach 0. I walked out of the clinic, and I was just reeling. It felt like a punch to the gut. All my some days had turned into now or never. But that shock was just the first wave. The second, far more devastating one, hit me a week later when my younger sister, Olivia, called. Olivia is 32. She is my opposite. She married her high school sweetheart, John, at 24. They have the perfect couple dynamic, the perfect house, the perfect life. But they didn't have one thing: children. 2 years ago, they got the terrible diagnosis: premature ovarian failure. Olivia had no chance. They tried everything. IVF with donor eggs, but nothing took. Adoption stalled due to bureaucracy. She was crushed. Olivia didn't call just to chat. She knew I had a reserve. We discussed it years ago in vague terms, but back then it was a theory. Now it had become their only reality. She didn't ask, she demanded. Stella. Her voice was taut as a pulled string. John and I discussed it. Your eggs. We need them. Please. We'll pay for everything. It's the only thing we have left. I was silent. I stood in the middle of my kitchen, holding a cup of cold coffee, listening to my last chance being demanded of me. Olivia, you know why I froze them? I was just at Collins. He said, This is my limit. I don't have time to create new ones. I don't have any others. These are my children, Olivia, do you understand? And then she exploded. I had never seen her like this. Her voice was filled with such pain and resentment that I felt like the most selfish person on earth. Selfish? You've always been selfish. You're 38 and you still don't know what you want. You're not even in a relationship. Are you going to unfreeze them to use with a sperm donor, Stella? Are you going to deny us the only chance we have to have a child who looks like family, who looks like us? I'm your sister. How can you? I gripped the phone. This isn't selfishness, Olivia. This is motherhood. These are my body, my cells, my last hopes. And yes, I am planning to do this with a donor. I am not going to wait around for some man to decide I'm worthy of being his wife and the mother of his children. I can't wait. I explained the doctor's words to her. I tried to make her see that this wasn't a choice between give or not give, but a choice between my child and her child. It wasn't a kidney donation. It was an auction for the last child in the family. She hung up. Not goodbye. Not, I'll call you back, just a disconnect. I knew she was crying. I knew John was comforting her right now. And I knew I had just done something that would change our relationship forever. The next day I got a text. Not from Olivia but from my mom, Patricia. I can't believe you did that to your sister. She is crushed. You've always been so cold, Stella. Olivia needs help and all you think about is yourself. Can't you sacrifice anything for her? For the family? Think about what you're doing. It had only been 1 week since I found out my own diagnosis. Just 1 week and I was already enemy number 1. I looked at my calendar. 38 years old. My last shot. I sat there, staring at the frozen future my sister wanted to take from me. And this was just the beginning. Now I had to live through this month knowing I had to choose between myself and my sister. I chose myself. And I don't know yet if I'll be able to forgive myself for it. Now they think I'm stealing their future, not just protecting mine. The silence that followed Olivia's call was heavier than any argument we'd ever had. It was the sound of a door slamming shut in my life, one that leads to the room where my sister and my mother used to live. Patricia's text message calling me cold and selfish didn't need a response. It was just a statement of fact, delivered by the family court of opinion. I realized that in their eyes I wasn't making a choice about my own body or my own future. I was actively withholding a gift, a cure, from my suffering sister. They weren't seeing a desperate 38-year-old woman facing the cliff edge of infertility. They were seeing an egoist who hoarded her eggs instead of sharing them with the family. That label stuck and it felt like a brand on my skin. The real pressure, the kind that makes you physically sick, started to mount immediately. Dear Colin's timeline was strict. Start the preparation cycle within the month. But starting meant opening my wallet and bleeding it dry. I had a decent job, nothing spectacular. A corporate gig that paid the bills and the mortgage on my small condo in the city. But IVF, especially at this critical stage, isn't just expensive. It's an absolute financial wrecking ball. I spent the next 3 days glued to my laptop, reviewing insurance policies, talking to financial advisors, and seeing the total cost flash on the screen. It was easily a six-figure sum when you factored in the drugs, the retrieval, the required sperm donor screening, and the eventual transfer attempts. I knew I would have to liquidate everything. My modest stock portfolio, the emergency savings I diligently built up, even seriously considering refinancing my condo or, worse, selling it. I remember sitting there looking at the spreadsheet. One column was IVF fund, and the other was retirement. One was getting full, the other was emptying out. It was a trade-off that felt brutally transactional. The money was a concrete, measurable barrier that suddenly felt more real than Olivia's tears. If I didn't get the money now, if I waited even another week, the physical clock inside me would tick down further, making the entire emotional and financial sacrifice moot. I avoided them for a few days, but in a small town like ours, family is inescapable. We ran into each other at the grocery store. It was only 6 days after the fateful phone call. Olivia and John were in the produce section looking at avocados. I saw them first and my instinct was to turn and run, to hide behind the dairy aisle. But I stood my ground. I walked past them trying to look preoccupied with the price of organic kale. John saw me. His face was a mask of cold disappointment. He's usually the gentle one, the peacekeeper. But now his eyes conveyed a message. You hurt her. I hate you for it. Olivia didn't even look up. She kept her head down, focusing intensely on the avocados, as if they were the most important thing in the world. It was a deliberate, total shunning. The kind of silent treatment that screams louder than any argument. Later that evening, I noticed I'd been removed from the family group chat, the one where we shared photos of holiday dinners and stupid memes. No formal announcement, just gone. It was a subtle, cruel way of saying, you are no longer one of us. The pressure didn't just come from them. It came from the weight of history. Patricia, my mother, decided to up the ante the next day with a phone call that was all about guilt. She didn't yell. She used that quiet, disappointed voice that always cuts deepest. When you were little Stella, she began, and you needed that expensive surgery for your knee, your father and I gave up our vacation for 5 years. We didn't even think about it. We just did it. Because you were family. Because that's what we do. I knew where she was going. She was equating a necessary medical procedure for a child with a voluntary donation of my only remaining reproductive material. It was a false equivalence, but in the heat of the moment, it felt impossible to argue against. Mom, this isn't a knee surgery, I whispered. This is my ability to have a child. I am giving up my financial stability just to afford this. I am sacrificing my future retirement for this one last chance. You're 38, Stella, she countered, her voice hardening. You still have time to save for retirement. Olivia has 0 time left to have this kind of child. A child that is genetically connected to us. Think about how much that would mean to John, to us, to your father. You're trading a hypothetical future for a concrete, beautiful reality. I ended the call shortly after. I felt trapped. This wasn't just about me and Olivia anymore. It was about the entire foundation of my family's emotional economy. They had all decided I was the wealthy one, the one with an endless supply of time and eggs and chances, and my refusal was an act of cold-hearted treason. Later that week, I went in for the first round of injections. A stack of medications and syringes that looked more like a chemistry set than a pathway to motherhood. The nurse, Brenda, was clinically efficient. She showed me how to mix the powders and inject myself. The whole process was so detached, so medical. It felt utterly divorced from the emotional chaos swirling around me. I was physically preparing to create life while simultaneously emotionally destroying the life I currently had with my family. The irony was suffocating. I looked at the calendar on my phone. Week 2 of the month. I had already burned through half my limited time. Every morning I would wake up, take the syringe and wonder, am I injecting hope or guilt? Am I sacrificing my future or saving it? I didn't know the answer, but the burning resentment from Olivia and Patricia made it clear that they already had their verdict. And that verdict was guilty. The worst part? I still hadn't told anyone about the real fear I had. The thing Dr. Collins mentioned almost as an afterthought. It wasn't just that my reserves were low. It was the quality. He couldn't guarantee that the frozen ones would even work. What if I went through all this, the financial ruin, the family rupture, the emotional and physical pain, only to find out that my last chance was actually a non-existent chance? And what if, knowing that, Olivia still hated me for not giving her those potentially futile cells? That fear was my constant shadow, growing darker with every passing day. My mother showed up with a contract and told me to choose family or isolation. The second week of the cycle was a blur of bloated discomfort, hormonal mood swings, and the sinking feeling of being completely and utterly alone. I was meticulously tracking my follicular development, seeing the numbers rise on the ultrasound screen, those tiny black circles representing my desperate future. But outside the clinic, the atmosphere at home and in my digital life was toxic. I was fully isolated. No calls, no texts, no social media interaction from anyone in the immediate family circle. It was like I had died, and they were all holding a silent, resentful funeral for the relationship we once had. I kept thinking about the money. Liquidating my stocks was the most painful part. Watching years of careful saving vanish just to pay for a handful of hormone shots and a highly uncertain procedure. The financial strain was relentless, a constant, sharp anxiety that wrapped around the already heavy emotional guilt. I sold the expensive custom bike I bought last year, listing it online and watching it go for half the price just to cover the next batch of prescriptions. It was a tangible loss for an intangible gain. The absolute definitive break came on Friday of the second week. I was supposed to have a follow-up ultrasound, but I had to call in sick to work first, claiming a terrible migraine, which wasn't far from the truth. The headache was purely psychosomatic, fueled by stress. I came home from the clinic, exhausted from the transvaginal scan and the constant worry, only to find my mother's car, Patricia's old silver sedan, parked right in my driveway. My heart immediately started hammering against my ribs. Patricia never just showed up. She always called first. This was an ambush. I unlocked the door and she was sitting on my sofa, looking regal and terribly disappointed, clutching a large brown manila envelope in her lap. The sight of that envelope, rigid and professional, sent a jolt of dread through me. This wasn't a social call. This was an intervention. "Stella," she said, her voice measured and quiet, the tone that always signifies maximum emotional weaponry deployment. "We need to finish this. We can't keep living like this. Olivia is deteriorating. John is miserable. I watch my daughter cry herself to sleep every night." I dropped my bag on the floor. "Mom, stop it. I am in the middle of the retrieval process. I am pumping my body full of chemicals. I am choosing my own survival. I told Olivia, I cannot give you my only chance." She didn't react to my raised voice. Instead, she slowly opened the envelope and pulled out a stack of documents. She laid them on the coffee table, smoothing them out with the palm of her hand. "This," she stated, tapping the thick paper, "is the legal agreement John had drawn up. He went to a firm that specializes in third-party reproduction. It's ironclad, Stella. It details the full payment. A lump sum of $150,000 deposited immediately into your account upon successful retrieval and transfer to Olivia. It covers all legal fees, the medical expenses, and even a lifetime non-disclosure agreement protecting your privacy. And the crucial part, they will pay for your current IVF cycle using donor sperm, in full with a second separate retrieval attempt in 6 months' time, paid entirely by them." I felt the blood drain from my face. The offer was staggering. $150,000. It would solve all my financial problems and more. But the real hook, the terrifying escalation, was the second retrieval promise. It meant that I could still have my child, but I would be relying on Olivia and John's good graces, and the slim chance that my body would produce a viable egg batch again in half a year. It was a financial lifeline wrapped around a steel chain of dependence. They're essentially buying my future, Mom, and demanding I gamble my only certainty, I said, my voice shaking. No, Stella, she countered, leaning forward, her eyes locked on mine. They are providing you with a financial cushion and a guarantee for another try, something you can't guarantee for yourself right now. You are giving Olivia a certainty, a child that is family. You are 38. We know the statistics. Those frozen eggs are a huge gamble anyway. Do this for your sister. Sign this, take the money, and let us all breathe again. Then came the conflict, the hard, agonizing twist that ratcheted the tension to an unbearable level. She didn't just appeal to family. She issued a stark ultimatum, devoid of any emotional cushioning. If you refuse this, Stella, Patricia said, her voice dropping to a near whisper, John has already told me he will cut us off, financially, emotionally. He will take Olivia and move to another state. We will never see them or any potential future children they adopt or conceive again. And frankly, Stella, your father and I, we have already chosen. If you don't sign this, you will be completely alone. You will lose not just Olivia but us too. You will spend your $100,000 trying to get pregnant with a frozen egg that might fail, and you will do it in complete isolation. Choose the life we offer you, connected, wealthy, and with a guaranteed second chance, or this. She gestured around my condo, which suddenly felt small and cold. Isolation and debt. I looked at the documents, then at my mother's face. She wasn't bluffing. Her eyes held that cold, unwavering determination. This was the moment of complete rupture. The realization hit me that my entire family was willing to exchange my only chance at motherhood for their collective peace and Olivia's happiness. They had quantified my womb, set a price, and delivered a non-negotiable contract. I was holding the fate of my family, and the fate of my own lineage, in my hands. The silence in the room was deafening, interrupted only by the frantic beat of my own heart, counting down the seconds until I had to answer. I knew I had 48 hours until my final retrieval appointment, the point of no return. The pressure was suffocating. The manila envelope sat on my coffee table like a ticking explosive device. I didn't touch it after my mother, Patricia, left, but its presence dominated the room, suffocating the air I breathed. Her ultimatum, financial salvation and a theoretical second chance versus absolute isolation and debt, was calculated, brutal, and terrifyingly effective. She knew exactly which buttons to push. My fear of solitude and my very real anxiety about going broke trying to achieve this one last dream. I had 48 hours. 48 hours until the final scan before the retrieval, the point where I would either commit to the process for myself or sign those papers, hand over my future, and accept the $150,000 and the promised second chance. For the first 24 hours, I did nothing but pace, staring at the contract. The money looked so clean, so easy. I could pay off the mortgage, fund a proper retirement account, and take the immediate crushing financial pressure off my back. And they promised me another retrieval. 6 months from now. Maybe I was being selfish, as they all said. Maybe I should trust the financial stability over the biological uncertainty. But then I remembered Dr. Collins' face from 2 weeks ago, and a gnawing suspicion started to form. He wasn't just serious. He was gravely concerned. His words about the quality and quantity of the frozen eggs were troubling, but there was something else, something he had mentioned almost as an aside, that I hadn't fully processed until I was staring at my family's transactional offer. I picked up the phone and called the clinic. It took hours of persistence, calling back every 30 minutes, but I finally got Dr. Collins on the line late Sunday evening. He sounded tired but professional. Dr. Collins, I started, trying to keep my voice steady. I need absolute clarity on the frozen eggs. You said their quality was uncertain due to the age I was when they were retrieved, but you also mentioned something about a genetic marker test we ran 2 years ago. Can you remind me of the results? There was a brief, heavy pause on the other end. Stella, I don't typically discuss these specific details over the phone, especially not with this level of urgency. But given your current stress level and the upcoming retrieval, I'll give you the facts. The eggs we froze, while viable, carried a significantly higher than normal risk for an aneuploidy disorder, a chromosomal abnormality. We noted this in your file. Not a guarantee of a problem, but the risk factor was elevated. You remember we discussed PGT testing being mandatory? I remembered. PGT, preimplantation genetic testing, screens embryos for these very problems. It adds thousands of dollars to the cost. But now I understood the full weight of his concern. My frozen eggs were not just old, they were risky. And the eggs I am stimulating now, this new batch? I asked, my voice barely a whisper. The new eggs, he confirmed, are being stimulated now at 38, not 35. Statistically, the chance of aneuploidy is higher again. However, based on your hormone response to the stimulation, the quality is looking unexpectedly robust. Better than we projected. If you retrieve this current batch and we fertilize them, you will have a higher chance of a successful, healthy embryo than with the frozen batch. He then added the cold, hard truth that became my anchor. But Stella, let's be blunt. If you wait 6 months, as per this arrangement you mentioned, the chance of us retrieving any eggs in a second cycle is low. Your ovarian reserve is fading fast. You are running on fumes. Waiting 6 months would be a catastrophic gamble. The phone call was the crucial plot twist, the hard, clear data I needed. My frozen eggs, the ones Olivia was desperately demanding, were the least viable option. My current stimulated eggs, the ones I was literally injecting hormones into twice a day, were my best shot and probably my only shot. I hung up, looking at the contract. Now, the language of the agreement, the part promising a second retrieval in 6 months, no longer sounded like a generous fallback plan. It sounded like a cynical guarantee of failure. Olivia and John weren't just asking me to sacrifice my potential future. They were knowingly or unknowingly asking me to sacrifice my only viable future for their least viable chance. The family wasn't just offering a lifeboat, they were offering a life raft with holes, knowing I'd sink in 6 months anyway. The moral dilemma shifted violently. It was no longer, am I selfish for not giving them a chance? It was, am I a fool for giving up my one good chance for their bad chance, just to keep the peace and get money? I picked up the manila envelope, but instead of a pen, I grabbed a glass of water and my syringe. I had my injection to do. As the needle pierced my skin, I made my decision. The money, the family, the promises, they all dissolved in the face of Dr. Collins' clinical facts. But I still needed to face the final confrontation. I couldn't just tell Olivia no again. I had to face Patricia and expose the cold, hard truth of the contract's real value. 0 viability in 6 months. I had to make them look at the data, not the emotion. I had to confront my sister one last time, with the contract and the ultrasound images spread between us, and make her understand that she was asking me to commit biological suicide. The final retrieval was scheduled for Tuesday morning. Monday was confrontation day, and I was terrified. I couldn't wait until Monday. The truth Dr. Collins gave me, that the frozen eggs were risky, and the 6-month delay would mean a catastrophic gamble on a future cycle, burned a hole through the contract and through my gut. Knowing that my sister, wittingly or not, was pushing me toward biological oblivion under the guise of family sacrifice, made my blood run cold. It wasn't about selfishness. It was about survival. I called Olivia. Her voice on the phone was immediately hostile, flat, and dripping with controlled resentment. What, Stella? Did Mom's offer finally break through your granite heart? Olivia, I said, my voice low and steady, trying to push past the emotional noise. We need to meet. Right now. You, me, John. I have the papers and I have the medical data. This ends tonight. To my surprise, she agreed. We met at a neutral, sterile place. A 24-hour diner halfway between our homes. It was 10 p.m. The place was fluorescently lit, smelling of stale coffee and burnt oil, the perfect, harsh backdrop for the ugly reality we were about. Vristavith on the table. They arrived together. Olivia didn't hug me. She just slid into the vinyl booth across from me, her arms crossed, looking guarded and furious. John sat next to her, his posture rigid, his face grim. They looked like a unified front, ready for battle. I didn't waste time. I pulled out the manila envelope and slammed it down. I know what this contract really is, I stated, pushing the papers towards them. It's not a generous offer. It's a deal designed to ensure I fail. Olivia scoffed. Oh, here we go. The victim complex. You get $150,000 and a second chance, Stella. What more do you want? I want the truth, I snapped, pulling out the ultrasound printouts from my latest scan, placing them next to the contract. Your doctor and mine both know the reality. The eggs I have frozen, the ones you're demanding, are high risk for aneuploidy. They are a gamble. I looked directly at Olivia, my eyes burning. But here's the key, the real twist. Dr. Collins confirmed that my current ovarian reserve is crashing. If I wait 6 months for your guaranteed second cycle, I will produce 0 viable eggs. 0. The money is a bribe to make me commit to a dead-end plan. You're asking me to trade my only robust chance for your risky one, and in 6 months you'll have the frozen eggs, and I'll have nothing but the money and the knowledge that I destroyed my own future for a family that blackmailed me. Olivia didn't flinch, but John did. I saw a flicker of doubt in his eyes. He leaned forward, picking up the contract, scanning the second retrieval clause. John, did your lawyer or your doctor explain the timeline and the risks of waiting 6 months for Stella's condition? I challenged him directly. He hesitated. The lawyer said it was a fair settlement for the genetic material, and the 6 months was a concession to allow her time to recover from the first cycle. It was a trap, John, I insisted. It was the ultimate gamble with my life. This is not about sharing. It's about taking my last breath of hope. Olivia finally broke, but not with sadness. She erupted in pure white-hot fury. She reached across the table, grabbing the contract and crumpling it in her fist. I don't care about your numbers, Stella. I don't care about your statistics. This is about blood. About having a child who has my mother's eyes, who has your family's history. You are 38 and single. You don't have a partner to share this with. We are a stable home. We have the love. We have the perfect life for this child. You just want a baby to fill a hole in your lonely life. And you are taking the only connection to my family I will ever have. Her words were like shards of glass, attacking my life, my choices, my singleness. They were the culmination of every family judgment ever whispered about my independent, non-traditional life. I stood up slowly, pushing back the booth. I was trembling, but I held on to my clarity. I looked down at her, clutching the crumpled paper. You're right, Olivia. I am 38 and single. And yes, this is my last lonely chance to be a mother. And I choose it. I choose my own survival. I reached into my purse, pulled out a stack of hundreds, the money I made selling my bike, and threw it onto the table. It was about $2,000. That is my payment for the next 2 weeks of medication, I stated flatly. I'm buying my baby. You can take the contract and the money you offered me. You can take my mother and the rest of the family. You can move to another state. But you are not taking my last shot at motherhood. I looked at John, whose face was now a mixture of horror and realization. You have every right to be angry, John, but you have no right to demand I destroy myself to save your marriage. You have other options. I have none. I turned and walked out of the diner. I didn't look back. I got into my car and drove straight to the clinic for my early morning appointment. The retrieval was successful. They got 10 beautiful, high-quality eggs, my personal jackpot. The month ended in complete silence. My phone hasn't rung. Patricia hasn't texted. Olivia is gone. She and John moved 2 states away, just as promised. I am officially isolated from my entire immediate family. The $150,000 never materialized, but neither did the guilt. I didn't need the money. I needed the peace. Now I wait. I wait for the results of the fertilization, for the PGT testing, for the ultimate answer. I am alone in my condo, but I am no longer terrified of my future. I traded a toxic, judgmental family for a chance at an uncertain, independent motherhood. It was the hardest choice of my life, the most ruthless thing I've ever done. Sometimes the most selfless act you can commit is the act of choosing yourself. And as I look at the calendar, marking the start of a new month, I realize that the silence isn't loneliness. It's the quiet space where my new life is trying to grow. The question remains: did I pay too high a price for my peace? Or was the family I lost worth less than the chance at the child I fought to keep?